The Trap Set will always be available for free, but we rely on donations from our listeners. Please visit our website at thetrapset.net and click Donate. Subscribe to our show on iTunes, and if you enjoy what you hear, give us a review.
This is Joe Wong. Welcome to the Trap Set, where each week we explore the lives of drummers. I want to play something for you. You're hearing Your Love Belongs Under a Rock by the Dirtbombs, featuring my guest, Ben Blackwell on drums. Ben joined the two-drummer Detroit-based outfit at age 17, and the band was part of a resurgence that evoked Detroit's proud rock and roll history. Ben's collaborated with artists such as Jack White, the Come-Ons, Detroit City Council, and the Mistreaters. He's released 2 solo albums under his own name, created his own label, Cass Records, and has also been active as a journalist. I spoke to Ben at his office at Third Man Records in Nashville, where he oversees vinyl production. And now our conversation with Ben Blackwell.
I'm the middle of 3 kids. So I have an older brother named Steven, a younger sister named Angela. My mother's a lab technician. So she works with blood in a hospital. And my father is a coach and gym teacher for 40-some years.
I noticed you had a pull-up bar in the entrance to your office.
Yes.
Does that come from your father?
That comes from when I was younger, up through maybe about being 5 or 6 years old. One of my uncles lived with us at our house up until the point where he got married. And his room had a pull-up bar in the doorway. And when you're 5 years old, a pull-up bar is the coolest thing in the world.
Did you idolize your uncle?
You know, it's weird for him living with us. I have so few memories of him actually there, but he kind of, kept to himself. He would play with us, me, my brother, and my sister, but I didn't hate him. I didn't idolize him. He was, it was fun to play with, but the pull-up bar stayed, I think, when he left. Yeah, I think it stayed because there was pull-up bar at my grandma's house too. There's a lot of pull-up bars growing up, but the one that made it here at Third Man was, if you look at the archways of the doors, there's these wooden constructions that are kind of like ledges that I would just always grab on them and do like fake pull-ups just to mess around. And one day I came in, I don't know if I was gone from a vacation or something, but there was a pull-up bar installed. That was a present from Jack. One part, it's pretty cool to have a pull-up bar, but I think second part, maybe he didn't want these wooden, nice constructions to just fall under my weight. But you were asking how I grew up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you a happy kid?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Were your parents together when you were growing up?
My parents were together. No one has ever asked this before. That's so weird.
I care.
You do care. You're very disarming. My parents were together until I was like 4th or 5th grade. I think 5th grade. And they separated. And then they were kind of back together for a little bit in high school. And then were divorced by like my first year of college. 2001 or something like that. But it was never, my dad, because he coached a lot and I played a lot of sports at that time, he was very often my coach. So it was never this thing where I ever felt like, oh, I never see my dad. That kind of classic thing you hear amongst divorced families or whatever. I spent lots of time with my dad. I never felt... I mean, I feel extremely lucky. You talk to people who their parents divorcing absolutely just destroys them. But I don't know. I think part of being a middle child, you just immediately... You kind of think that what your feelings aren't the end-all be-all of a situation. You know, there's a lot of other people.
Your ego's already been knocked down.
Yeah, you're not the oldest. You're not the youngest. You don't get coddled. You kind of just have to go with the flow. So I think like the day my mom told me that they were just separating. This was like in 5th grade. I was like, oh my God! Like went through the Kubler-Ross dealing with grief. Like
all in that day?
It was like, immediately like denial, like this isn't happening, this isn't happening. And then I think by the end of the day I was like accepted of it. And I wish I knew as a kid what the Kubler-Ross managing grief, stages of grief was. Would have been a really smart 5th grader.
You might have been too smart.
But part of it, I think what may have helped in that regard was when I started to play drums, my dad wasn't in the house. So my mom worked midnights. So for a lot of the time, I had this very, very unprecedented, I wouldn't say free reign, but ability to kind of do what I wanted or needed. And I got a brother and sister there too. But I was never really told you can't play. I was never really told that's too loud. The neighbors are complaining. I think I got a neighbor complaint once. Not even a complaint, but just the guy who lived across the street. He said, "Do you know if someone's playing music or started a band?" And we were playing in the garage at that point before we migrated to the basement. I just made note, like, I gotta stay on that guy's good side. I'm not gonna make too much more noise. But no, happy childhood. Great, did great in school. All A's some of the time. Played a lot of sports.
So you were a pretty smart 5th grader.
I was,
even though you didn't know about like basic psychology.
I didn't. Well, my mom was studying psychology at the time, so she'd often bring like tests home, like weird aptitude tests and stuff like that, and I'd do those. That was always fun. Like, what test is mom gonna? She'll bring home a test where she doesn't talk to you at all when she's giving the test. She just displays something, how to put together some random shapes. And then you have to do it. Tests that I think for a while she had to give tests to deaf children. So interesting stuff like that.
On Barrett's Ribbon Farm, Dalzell crept up with guns. Pontiac was a patient man and made a bloody run. The ugliest for Prez was Louis Cass, they say. He had boils on his face, he's hanging here all day. MFIC, with the nameplate on his desk. Coleman Young never backed down, now he's catching up on Reds. Sonic Smith, he left us.
How did you gravitate towards drums?
My Uncle Jack kind of pushed me towards them.
Jack White,
yeah. A drummer. There was a drum set that was kicking around the family house, my grandma's house, an old, like, no badges on it, no bottom heads, just wood finish. It almost looked like someone had ripped a wrap off of it. No mount for the tom, no legs in the bass drum. There was a mount for the tom, but it was terribly rudimentary. And I remember once telling Jack that I was kind of getting into music at that time. I was listening to Nirvana specifically, but then also like getting into the Breeders, and I think that pricked his ears up. He's like, that I wasn't just listening to bullshit. Like I think the fact that I was into the Breeders, he kind of saw some potential in that. And I said something about playing guitar. He said, "Oh man, don't play guitar. There's already 10 guitar players growing up on your street. You should play drums." Okay. So he, not that long afterwards, he styled me with the parts of the drum kit. So it was like a snare drum, snare stand. I think I had to buy a kick pedal, and then this brown drum set, and I think some hi-hats.
How did you connect to the instrument? Jack hooked you up with the drum set. Did you experience a feeling of elation when you first, realized that you could do this?
I think it was a path of least resistance. I loved music, and the idea of playing it seemed really, really exciting, but I don't think I could have figured out how to play a guitar.
Right.
I can count out, beats on a bass drum or snare drum. You can play kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare. I mean, Jack once told me at one point, he's like, every drum beat is essentially kick, snare. If you want to say in the rock and roll world or whatever. I'm like, oh yeah, you're actually right. That does make sense. So you can break down drumming to the simplest part of a root note and an accent, basically. And so that, for me, not having any instruction was very, very helpful. I I played drums in marching band in high school for a semester, but I was never taught anything. It was, hey, you're playing a bass drum and we're playing Louie Louie. Okay, I know how Louie Louie goes. I just hit, on the 2 and the 4 or whatever. And the same, Land of a Thousand Dances, just standard marching band stuff. And I played concert band too, and I wouldn't be able to tell you anything I learned. I basically just knew when to hit the drum without really paying attention to music and sheet music in front of me.
Do you feel like the kind of vast history of music in Detroit rubbed off on you at an early age? Were you aware of it? Were you aware of like the Stooges and the MC5 and all the techno groups? I was aware of Motown. Probably was the first real local music that I was aware of. When I was in fifth or sixth grade, I played in a baseball series where there's a team came over from Toyota City, Japan, and they sent a team of little leaguers from there to Detroit, and we played this thing called the Friendship Series. And so we played 3 games of Let me
baseball.
guess, they won.
They won 2 out of the 3 games, but the final game, they won the first one and the last one. No, we won the first one. They won the last 2.
It was like emblematic of what was going to happen in the auto industry.
Well, I think this was 91 or 92. The writing was already clear. But we went to Motown as part of it. I could talk about how my international batting average, my batting average in international play is 1,000, and I've got 1 game-winning RBI. We can discuss that when you have your youth baseball podcast, the Bat Set.
When I was a kid, when I started getting really into drumming and music, I had this perception that I had to choose. Like, am I going to play sports or am I going to be a musician? Like, there was a delineation. Lots of it was in my own head, but
yeah,
I felt like, especially in school, there were music kids and then sport kids.
Yeah, it's jocks and
kids.
it's band. There's jocks
but
and it's
you did
rockers.
both.
Well, I traded one for the other, I think.
Oh, you did?
I played soccer 4 years in high school, but I think I skipped. Here's the thing where you either laugh or you cry, but I think I skipped my last soccer game senior year to go and rehearse with a new band that I'd just joined.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was, I think what I got disconnected from in sports was when once you get to high school, it becomes hyper competitive. So, and I definitely have that competitive gene in me, but just like,
is it a gene?
Well, it's the idea of,
or is it that you were raised by a coach?
I like playing, I like winning, but I also had fun doing it. And as
Are we having a pull-up contest after this, or
we
what?
might. Do you do a lot of pull-ups? But I guess when it ceased to be about playing the game and turned into who's your travel coach and what leagues are you playing in, and are you friends with the head coach and all that stuff, it's like, I just want to play. Like, I didn't have time. I played baseball for freshman year and basically got discouraged. I was a good baseball player.
What did you play?
I was mainly first base at that point. I could pitch a little bit, but never really focused on it too much. That might have disappointed my dad. I'm left-handed, so left-handed pitcher, you're halfway
Southpaw.
there. Exactly. But I didn't. Yeah, I definitely agree with you, and I've thought a lot about that. That when you're younger, there's a very clear delineation between music and or music and sports.
I mean, this is something that I also spoke about with Dale Crover.
Yeah.
You know, he's a huge baseball fan.
Yeah.
And he had to pretend that he wasn't a baseball fan for decades.
Well, I mean, a lot of what I think I gather that from is reading all the classic literature and writing about Nirvana, where they rail against jocks. And it's like, it's not jocks that are the problem. It's the mentality. It's the stereotypical jock mentality of like, fuck you, nerd, you know, that kind of shit. Like, there's nothing wrong with wanting to play baseball or wanting to play soccer or anything like that. That's totally fun and healthy. It's being an asshole about it that sucks.
1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. Love is blindness. I don't wanna see. Won't you wrap the night around me? Oh, my heart. Love is blindness. Yeah. I'm in a parked car on a crowded street.
What were your plans when you were in high school? What did you want to do with your life?
I really, I wanted to write. Like, probably starting around, I remember a freshman English class where the assignment was you had to write a paper in class every Friday or something like that. And the teacher saying, you really seem to have fun doing this. And I'd never really thought of it anything. It was more like, you can say stupid stuff and make people laugh, and that's great. But he really said, you should think about writing for the school newspaper. And so the next year, sophomore year, I started writing for the school newspaper and really, really enjoyed writing, where I'd do it for fun. Always pretty much like essays, like nonfiction. I wasn't really like writing, making things up, stories or anything like that. So I'd write concert reviews and record reviews in the school newspaper. And when I graduated high school, that's what I went to college for. I had a scholarship. Or I didn't get a scholarship for writing. I had a scholarship and I was studying writing. But yeah, I think my goal at that point, I knew I wasn't going to be a baseball player. While I had joined the Dirtbombs already, there was no real delusions that I'm going to be a rock star. There was never the delusions that I was going to be a rock star. It just kind of was something I played in a band throughout the entirety of it all. But I thought if I could be a writer at like an alternative weekly or an editor at like a major daily, that would be ideal if I could just write about music. But that I never really got to that point.
Why not? What happened?
Well, the band took. I dropped out of college. I finished 3 years, and at the end of that 3 years, what would have been my fourth year of college, the Dirtbombs. This was 2003. We had Dangerous Magical Noise coming out, and we had 2 months of touring scheduled during the school year. And I'd made touring work for almost the first 3 years without any real conflicts. I said, you know what? I can always go back if I want. But, we're going to do 3 weeks in the U.S. and 4 weeks in Europe. I should just do this, drop out.
Was the band self-sustaining at that point? Were you making money?
I mean, we were making money, but I don't think anyone in the history of that band was ever solely living off the proceeds from that band. In a real world kind of way.
Right.
Mick lived with his dad until his dad died in 2008, and I lived with my mom until the house we lived in caught on fire in 2008. Pat and Co., Pat would have side jobs. He was unemployed for a while. Co was always doing still does, Little Steven's Underground Garage. She's a radio DJ, so she got money from doing that, and she can record that anywhere. Just take a microphone with her and have a laptop. So, but me living with my mom, essentially not paying rent. You come back from a tour with 4-week tour with $1,000 in your pocket.
In Detroit.
Well, for me, it was almost go spend $1,000 on records or something.
So we're at Third Man Records.
Yeah.
In Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
What is your role here?
My business card says Psychedelic Stooge. You can see there's lots of Stooges ephemera all over here. But I mean, I oversee our vinyl manufacturing and distribution, and then little bits of everything else. If we do reissues, I kind of have a hand in a lot of those. Some A&R stuff. We've got some new releases coming out with Wolf Eyes and Timmy's Organism. I kind of shepherded those through here, made those happen. But everyone does a little bit of everything here. So playing drums has come up a couple times too. We have our own studio, and so I've gotten calls for sessions a couple times, like, "Hey, are you busy today?" No. What do you need? Come and play drums on this thing. All right, I'll be right there.
And there's a live venue here too.
Yeah. We have a live.
And the live venue is set up to record on tape, correct?
We'll record to tape, but we also record direct to vinyl as well.
Okay.
So we have both of those capabilities. I've never played live here though.
Do you have a wire recorder? You want to go that far back?
We don't. I have some friends that
I have a
done
question.
wire recordings.
So, I mean, okay, there's this perception that vinyl is more organic than MP3s or CDs, when in fact vinyl is a chemical and it's inorganic, and if you can't eat it, you'll die. It's a toxic chemical.
Yeah.
And vinyl and CDs both create illusions, right? They're both magical illusions to a certain extent. What is it about analog technology that appeals to Third Man?
I think it's a little bit of putting yourself in a box, but also a little bit of it's not the first choice for the overwhelming segment of the population. The fact that I've often kind of in description of when people send me CDs, I say I won't listen to a CD because it's too easy. Anyone can sit and record something and make a CD of it and send it to me. There's no blood, sweat, and tears inherent in it. It's not saying it can't be there. I'm saying it's not automatically there. Conversely, if someone sends me a piece of their music on vinyl, whether it's an LP or a 45 or whatever, it inherently tells me that they've gone the extra mile. And if you're going that extra mile, to me it means you believe in it. There's something deeper there than sending me a link or sending me a CD. And I think that is inherent with analog technology, whether it's recording to tape or vinyl pressing in and of itself. I think organic, has become a buzzword that's permutated into lots of different interpretations, along the same lines as hipster or whatever you want to say. Pele from the Hives once said a thing to me where he was here recently, and someone said something derisive about hipsters. He said, "Man, I love hipsters." And I'd never heard that sentiment before. I said, "Well, what do you mean you love hipsters?" He said, "I used to tour when everything was anarchy and punk rock. And we're sitting in squats and eating terrible chicken. Now, because of hipsters, I can go to any city in America
and have organic chicken.
I can get amazing food. There's a stellar coffee shop wherever you go, bookstores, record stores, all that stuff." He said that he's like, "For me, my life, I love hipsters." And there's something I'm curious as to why that is, because that doesn't seem to have existed in the 90s on a large scale, or in the 80s or in the 70s. Maybe you could argue hippie culture brushed upon that, but I'm wondering if part of it is disillusioned Gen Xers who've realized, you know what, my goal isn't to make as much money as possible. I want to do something that I love and care about. And a lot of people love and care about music. They love and care about food or coffee. And, a lot of people, most of these people probably don't have any delusions that they're going to get rich doing it, but they will feel fulfilled. I like to think that's the reason behind what is air quoted as hipster culture. We were talking about Milwaukee. We're talking about, I don't know if you'd call it, I wouldn't call it gourmet sausage place, but the sausage bar. What's the name of it?
The Vanguard.
The Vanguard in Milwaukee. Bunch of younger Gen X guys who started a place that no one's going to become a multimillionaire from, but they're passionate about it and they love it. It's not something that I think you would see very many of our parents or baby boomers kind of doing that thing.
But on the other hand, our grandparents would have. Part of the
I think
issue that people have with hipster culture is that it to a certain extent fetishizes what was normal for our grandparents' generation, right? Like artisanal stuff that all used to be normal.
I think a lot of it is the perceived disingenuine nature of it. People liking things not for the reason that they should be liked. Or someone had said that to me, like that was their definition of a hipster.
Maybe just to signify,
like I like vinyl
because it signifies that
it says something about you.
sophisticated.
Exactly. Which I'm, but I've also said,
listen, I can tell that you're not very sophisticated. I know you're coming from a genuine place.
but talking about hipsters in terms of vinyl, you could say a lot of people don't even listen to the vinyl. They just have it because people think they think that the sight of it, a shelf on their wall with records, means that they're cool or they're sophisticated or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, that's perfect. That's totally true in a lot of situations. But we've got them to buy vinyl records. It's not a big stretch that at some point they will listen to those vinyl records, and they could quite possibly end up legitimately preferring them to digital streaming music or CDs or whatever. So I'm okay with people, at least in my world, which is trying to sell vinyl records, I'm okay with people buying them for the wrong reasons.
I mean, it seems that you guys you certainly benefited from the tail end of the major label paradigm, and then were able to parlay that into a successful business.
Yeah. The White Stripes specifically, they caught the tail end of major label. People were still selling CDs come 2003 when Elephant comes out, but we're also they were shrewd enough to be able to retain the rights to all of their masters, and that's why Third Man exists, because we own the vinyl rights to all of that stuff. So, now people always bemoan the idea of 360 deals and all that stuff. You have to sign away your merchandising rights, and the label gets a cut of your touring and all that stuff. A band would not be able to take that similar path that the White Stripes did just 15 years ago.
This episode of The Trap Set is brought to you in part by Colectivo Coffee. Handmade coffee since 1993. Check them out online at colectivo.com.
So you became a father recently.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
How many kids do you have?
I have a daughter. She's 2. Her name's Violet.
And you mentioned that it made you see the world in a different way, and it made you connect to your emotions more deeply. Yeah. Like you cry watching a Modern Family episode.
Yeah, man. I thought we were just going to talk about drums, but we talk about life. You think of even getting married, as amazing as that is, and kind of joining into a partnership that is kind of unprecedented in one's life. It doesn't really make you think. It doesn't make you think more it doesn't necessarily make you think less of yourself in a less selfish manner. But having a kid, immediately there's so many things that you instantly just cannot be selfish about. You have to think of this other person. Other two people, you're thinking about, the mother of your child, things like that. I oftentimes, one of the moments before Violet was born, there was that cruise ship in Italy that crashed off the coast of Italy, the Costa Concordia, and it took like forever to list over, and something like 5 people died. Like, not most people got off, but some people died. And I remember thinking, gosh, man, like, how the fuck do you die on that? Like, it's taking forever. Like, what happens? Like, how do you do that? And not long after, maybe a week or 2 after that happened, or whatever it was, I saw film footage of the people lining up for lifeboats. And it's dark, and it's deathly quiet, and that hit me. I was like, oh shit, I know how you die. You have a fucking wife and kids that you have to take care of. You're carrying a fucking 2-year-old, and you got to make sure that they're okay. No one gives a shit about you. Like, that's not your job. You're not going to fucking leave them behind. That was the instant of, because old 25-year-old punk rock drummer who swings from the ceiling and does headstands and cuts his head open and brings his drums out into the crowd, that guy would just jump off the fucking boat and swim to shore. Like, he's not going to be caught fucking dying in this boat. But the guy who's in his 30s, who's married and has a daughter who's 2 years old, that's not, you don't have that option. Your job becomes first and foremost protector of them. And secondly, much further down the line is then take care of yourself.
Well, I think that's a great place to end it. Ben Blackwell, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me. It's a great interview. We barely talked about drums.
The Trap Set is produced by me, Joe Wong, along with Chris Karwowski, who also edits the program. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Trap Set, and visit our website, thetrapset.net, to subscribe to our show for free. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please donate to our show. If you can't afford to donate, please tell a friend and give us a good rating on iTunes. Send your feedback and guest requests to thetrapset@gmail.com.